So Joe Biden has released the framework for the budget reconciliation bill. The bill that originally was supposed to be around $5 or $6 trillion was whittled down to $3.5 trillion and now will be in the ballpark of $1.75 trillion, which means a lot of provisions got cut. Some things remained, but they don't have the same type of funding that was originally proposed. I want to give you a quick summary of what's in and what's out of the budget reconciliation bill, and then we'll have a discussion about whether or not it should be supported by progressives, especially Justice Democrats. Now, the framework includes universal preschool for more than 6 million 3- and 4-year-olds and subsidies for childcare that would limit childcare costs to no more than 7% of income, meaning that it will in fact be means tested for families earning up to $300,000 a year. Now, the $400 billion in funding for both those provisions would last for 6 years. Then these programs would expire. Democrats are under the impression that the programs would be so popular that even if Republicans were in charge, they would have no choice but to extend these programs. We'll see. Now, $555 billion will be allocated for programs to move Americans to electric vehicles and also entice utilities away from natural gas and coal. Now, here's where I'm gonna stop and just note that while Biden and the rest of the corporate Democrats were ready and willing to give Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema all of their cookies, all of the important provisions in this bill, there is still no commitment from Manchin or Sinema that they will in fact vote in favor of the budget reconciliation bill. And I say that now because the last graphic I read to you regarding the coal and the gas, natural gas, remember, Manchin is against any provision that would hurt his bottom line. He is invested in the coal industry and he makes a lot of money off of it, which is why it's been a red line for him. So I just find it fascinating that they're still playing these games about how they're going to do something about climate change. I don't think that provision is going to make it at the end of the day, but for now it's still in the bill. One of the major climate provisions was in fact taken out. That was the one that would penalize fossil fuel companies and reward them if they do in fact decide to move toward renewable energy.
Yeah, and so that one didn't make it at all because that actually would have been very effective in getting them to move off of coal. And as you're gonna see later in the program, TYT Investigates has another story about how Manchin's fortunes have greatly increased throughout the negotiations because the markets realize, oh no, coal's here to stay, Manchin's gonna protect it, and he's got millions of dollars in coal. All right, now, look, I think there's two issues here. Number one is, leadership is trying to still get progressives to vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill first. Oh, they're like, oh, new emergency, Joe Biden's gonna take a trip. And if he's getting on a plane, we have to have it voted on. Do you? Don't care at all. Good news on that front, progressives aren't buying that. But the bigger issue is, well, what's in the actual Build Back Better bill? Worst name for a bill ever. Anyway,
BBB.
Yeah, that's actually slightly better. Anyway, and there, as Anna's explaining to you, and we got more on it, we got almost none of the progressive priorities left. It's totally eviscerated. So we're gonna ask you guys to help with pushing for at least one of our priorities. Otherwise, the ship's gonna sail. So, and they're still working on this. So this one is possible. It's definitely possible, but you gotta put pressure on now. If you don't put pressure on now, the ship's gonna sail without it. So it's Paid Family and Medical Leave Act. In fact, the medical part is likely to be dropped, but at a minimum, for God's sake, just do paid family leave. And so it used to be 12 weeks, they knocked it down to 4 weeks, and as we told you a couple of days ago, then they knocked it down to 0, nothing at all. You get pregnant, right back into the mines the minute you deliver the baby. Okay, so we got a petition up right now at tyt.com/petition/no deal, but you can just go to /petitions, you can hit the link in the description box, but or infrastructure vote. Make sure that you're participating. We get to 10,000, at least then it gets the press's attention, it gets progressive legislators' attention. Oh, there's a lot of people who really want paid family leave. Now the reality is, of course, the overwhelming majority of the country wants it. But we have to do things like petitions to get their attention because otherwise they're like, oh, I don't know, corporations say no. So it's kind of 90-10 against it. No, it's not. We all want it. And if you don't even have that, then they should vote no. No deal. Hashtag no deal. Otherwise, we got hearing in Medicare, as Anna's about to explain to you, and that's about it.
Right, and we'll give you some of the statements from progressives in regard to everything that's going on a little later in the show. But just to get back to what's in and what's out, yes, as it stands today, paid family and medical leave is not in the bill, but there is still a possibility that it'll be added back, okay? Progressives are claiming that they're fighting for that. We'll see what happens. Expansion of Medicare to cover vision, dental, and hearing was down to just hearing. A tax on the wealth of billionaires was also out, as I covered yesterday, in favor of a surtax on multimillionaires that would hit income, but not their mountains of wealth, meaning that there is no wealth tax included in the Build Back Better plan. Now, the promise of 2 free years of community college also gone unfulfilled, and the expanded child tax credit passed in March to give most families a $300 per child income support would be extended only till 2023, okay? So it will not be permanent, it will be extended for an additional year. Now, instead of the 2 years, this is the part that gets me. Instead of the 2 years of free community college, Democrats put in a bold provision of increasing Pell Grants to the tune of $550.
Ooh.
That's it, $550.
Wow,
that is it.
Anna, I didn't know they were gonna be this tough in negotiations.
And what's frustrating is that despite all of the things that have been cut out, you already see the cheerleading from Democratic leadership, which we'll get to in just a second. But the outline also omitted a proposal, long a Democratic priority, to lower the cost of prescription drugs by allowing Medicare to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies. And among the provisions that did happen to survive are federal programs for home health care and community care for older Americans and people with disabilities. The framework also contains $150 billion for rental assistance, home buying help, public housing repair, and other affordable programs. Now, before I get to the so-called pay-fors for what remains in this stripped down bill, I just want to give you a little taste of what House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had to say in regard to the bill. And the cheerleading has begun, the positive PR has begun, the complete revisionist take on this bill has begun, and it's incredibly frustrating. Let's watch.
Today we will be having a hearing. They'll hear from our chairman about the greatness of the Build Back Better initiative, and it's pretty exciting. I'm so proud of the work that our chairs have done and the work that everybody did to try to cut it in half, and in a way that we could maintain support for it, because that is competition for the dollar. Even at 3.5 trillion, when you cut it in half, it becomes, shall we say, keener.
She's so proud. A bill that was originally proposed as a $5 to $6 trillion bill, now down to 1.75 trillion, and has cut out major provisions that would have really improved people's lives.
So I think she accidentally said the truth there. She says she's really proud that she cut it in half. Well, she is. Look, what did we tell you? You saw it with your own eyes. We told you, and no one else in media told you this, that Biden and Pelosi and Schumer never meant any of those provisions. They never meant to pass the progressive priorities. It was always a trick. Why is she proud today that she cut it in half? Because her corporate donors are going to be thrilled, absolutely thrilled, that she did exactly what she had promised them. And Biden did exactly what he promised. Nothing would fundamentally change. All of this stuff is around the edges. It's adding money to programs that already exist or little add-ons. I mean, look, the Medicare provision is a perfect example. Bernie wanted dental, vision, and hearing added to Medicare. That would have made a big difference in a lot of people's lives. And you know what they did? They compromised on just hearing. So no teeth for you, and you can go blind if you like, but at least you'll be able to hear. Okay.
Yeah, and let me add to that, just to really express how awful Joe Manchin is. Because in these negotiations, President Biden was like, okay, fine, why don't we go ahead, we'll take out the vision, we'll take out the dental coverage in this Medicare expansion. But how about we at least add an $800 voucher for dental? And Manchin's like, no, can't even do the $800 voucher for Medicare recipients.
Because all corporate executives already have dental insurance. They don't need that at all. So why would he agree to it? You know why they included hearing is a fake compromise. Hearing costs almost nothing. Dental costs a lot, vision costs a decent amount. Hearing is barely an issue. So one of our members had a hilarious comment that they just wrote in with Occam's Taser wrote in, are they leaving hearing coverage in so we can hear the screams of everyone we left behind? Or the laughs of the corporate Dems? Maybe. And so, by the way, one of the reasons they kept hearing it, other than the fact that it's nearly irrelevant, is that apparently Sinema has some sort of issue with hearing. So, well, she certainly can't hear her voters, that's for sure.
Definitely does not listen.
So Sinema was like, I will allow hearing. Okay, so this is where we are. Look, everybody else is gonna pretty it up for you. Honestly, even some progressives might pretend to pretty it up for you.
It's unprecedented bill.
This is historic change, it's amazing. And look, we're fair and honest. There are some provisions in here that aren't so bad. Yes, we've told you about universal pre-K before, and we told you corporations love that because it's gonna drive you back to work and subsidized by the taxpayers, but it's still a good thing. But also on top of that, there's a 15% minimum tax on the profits of large corporations and including the money they make abroad. That's actually really good, okay? Now, mind you, it's just 15%. Okay, we didn't raise taxes on any corporations at all. Trump's tax cuts remain. They remain basically permanent. This is the Democrats surrendering to Trump's tax cuts.
Yes.
So that's both those things are true. You shouldn't leave out the minimum tax, that's a good thing, but you also shouldn't kid yourself that there's not a single dollar of tax increases above where Trump left the actual rates.
And again, I really want to reiterate that given how pared back this reconciliation bill is today, even with everything taken out, still no commitment from Joe Manchin or Kyrsten Sinema. There are some aides, some anonymous sources who have told the press that Sinema is now supportive of the reconciliation bill. I'd like to hear it out of her own mouth. The fact that she's unwilling to publicly support the bill as it stands today is telling, it really is. So with that said, why don't we move over to progressives, unless you have one other thing to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one last thing. Guys, to give you a sense of what a debacle this is, look, they took out the lowering drug prices. That has an 88% approval. Do we really live in a democracy? Why'd they take it out? Because of drug companies. Is this really a democracy?
No, and the only thing that matters is what the approval rating is among corporate donors. If they don't like it, we ain't getting it.
So I saw, or I listened to a podcast, a New York Times podcast that had featured Anna and small parts of it, The Daily. And it's amazing, mainstream media journalists, I think they literally don't know anything about politics. They're like, why is Sinema doing this? We can't, like, does she think that Arizona's more Republican than it appears to be? Look guys, all right, so why do you go against an 88% approval rating, right? Obviously because of the drug companies. Fossil fuel companies didn't want the climate provisions that were the most impactful, so they were taken out for the fossil fuel companies. The billionaire tax was taken out for who, guys? No, if you're a right winger, you're independent, you're anybody. If you're a mainstream media reporter, I know you'll be like, it had to be to help the poor and the middle class, right? No, it was taken out because everybody knows it to help billionaires. Because it's a billionaire tax, period. So don't there's one thing that remains. It's a gas of a sort. It's gaslighting. Don't let the mainstream media and the corporate Democrats gaslight you. They took out the billionaires tax to help billionaires. Every person that's a real person knows that. So by God, at least when we're having a baby, can we not be driven back into the mines the very next day? So tyt.com/petitions, if they don't get that, they'll pass it anyway, right? You know how politics is, it's hopeless, right? But we say they should say no deal. And you should be very adamant about it, including the progressive legislators, because this compromise is awful. Remember, 1.5 trillion is what Manchin said he wanted. We wanted 3.5 trillion, and we ended up at 1.75. Where's the compromise? No, we got slaughtered here. You got to, at a minimum, give us paid family leave. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.